In these times of uncertainty, it's all the more important that we keep collaborating, informing, and inspiring each other, so that we can be smarter and better tomorrow. Welcome to the Pakhuis de Zwijger livecast.
A very good evening. Welcome here live from Amsterdam, the livecast from Pakhuis de Zwijger. It's great to have you here, and we're going to have a fascinating 1 hour. Because our question of tonight will be, can art organizations, cultural organizations, can they contribute to European citizenship? Quite a question, of course, and a very needy question, because we see lots of challenges being going on in the world, in the European Union, in Europe as such. And of course, you need a European community to tackle these things if you want to cooperate with each other. Well, then the question becomes, who feels responsible for creating such a community and who can benefit and empower such a community? Well, the big question, of course, today is, can cultural organizations and NGOs be part of creating the citizenship we need as the European community as such? We have some great guests here in Amsterdam, but also live from different cities all over Europe to contribute to these questions and these ideas. I will introduce them one by one, but first I will introduce myself. My name is Farid Tabarki. I'm the founder of Studio Zeitgeist. Well, the name says it a bit. We research the zeitgeist and try to advise organizations about what's coming ahead of the coming years and what does it mean for your strategies and for your organizations. And I will be your moderator in the coming hour, and it's a real privilege to be able to have this discussion with all you. We go to our 6 different guests, and all these guests, I will give them a short introduction, then they can introduce themselves, and I will have the following question for them. Because when we hear from them for the first time, and then we go in depth into some of these questions, how they contribute to a learning environment for cultural organizations to actually create citizenship needed and how to participate in this. And of course, the question then becomes, how do you create and facilitate the right learning community? We go to our 6 guests, and all of them, I would like to ask them to give a short answer on the question, why and how are cultural organizations and NGOs perfectly equipped to facilitate European citizenship? So when you introduce yourself, it would be nice to hear from you how you think and what are the instruments cultural organizations have to actually facilitate and create European citizenship. We go one by one, but very short answers because we have an hour. We have plenty of time to dive into this topic. Let's start with Isabella Agardi. She's the historian, researcher, and academic programming coordinator at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Kocek in Hungary. Isabella, maybe there's some more to say about you, and please give your short answer why you think cultural organizations are so well equipped to actually work on this European citizenship.
Welcome, everybody. I'm first and foremost a historian, and I work in Hungary. And this is the organizations that I'm working for are kind of fusing the field of culture and education. I mean, you know that I'm at the Advanced Studies. I'm at an Advanced Studies Institute, which deals very much with doing basic research and knowledge production. Although we are in an interesting field there, where we try to do knowledge transfer and also to create kind of a social impact for the knowledge that we produce. And I think that to answer your question, NGOs and kind of small cultural organizations, we do have an NGO next to the governmental institute. They are really good because they are flexible and they reach people. They sometimes academia and research are fields in society that are very much walled off, and they are very much sometimes in their own world. They create their own audiences, and smaller niche organizations do have the power to reach different different groups of society, different age groups, different social groups, relatively easy. So the kind of long road of knowledge transfer that is traditionally from research through to schools, then to cultural institutions, can actually be shortened a little bit. So
great.
And that's why I think it's a really cool project, and it's really a necessity to collaborate.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a bit about that a bit more, because you also have been involved about this learning community as one of the founders of the project. We'll discuss it a bit later on. But let's go to our next guest, the head of European Affairs and Brussels delegation, Miguel Ramos. There you are. Please introduce yourself a little bit more than what I just mentioned, and also why do you think our cultural organization is so well equipped to work on this European citizenship?
Well, thank you very much, Farid, and thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this debate. It has been a pleasure to work with all the partners in this important project on heritage, culture, and citizenship. I'm Miguel Martin Ramos. I'm working for a cultural foundation. It's the European and Ibero-American Academy of History Foundation. The headquarters of the foundation is here, just behind me. They are in Spain, but unfortunately, I'm not in Spain. I'm in Brussels, which is quite a different place. But this is the place where everything happens in our foundation, almost everything, because at the end we are a European foundation. We are a civil society organization, and it's in our genes to work on the field of culture to promote European integration, and therefore to promote also citizenship. All our activities are focused on how to close Europe to citizens, and how to produce and how to encourage and foster this citizenship. And of course, culture is for us our main, let's say, tool between brackets, because it's the way we can easily approach in a very close way to citizens, and citizens from all kind of ages, groups. We address to university students, we address to groups of who are marginalized, we address to journalists, we address to politicians. So we address, thanks to culture, we are able to address different kinds of public, and we are, as foundation, as a civil society, we are one of those institutions that are closer to citizens, and also that can be a bridge between the difficulty or the difficult understanding the European Union and the citizens' needs themselves. So this is mainly our role. And for us, culture is the best way to do it, because it allows us also to do it in a way that everybody understands, and allow us to approach the European vision in a different way.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Miguel. We'll also discuss with you a bit later on, together with Isabella, as one of the institutions who started working on creating the right learning community within the cultural field to actually explore this European citizenship. Our third guest out of 6 we have tonight for you to discuss this how it can be done and what kind of instruments do we have. We go to the founding partner of Common Ground, Common Sense, Utz Westerhof. Utz.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm Utz Westerhof. I'm working in the cultural fields for about 25 years now, mostly as a temporary director of theaters, festivals, funds, etc. Sometimes as an advisor as well on city development and other parts where creativity is at stake. Your question was how can we use our institutions more as an institute for empowerment of citizenship, and I think that the most important thing we have to do is switch the metaphor in how we approach society. We strongly consider also in the institutions our citizens as consumers that buy tickets, but we have to see our institutions as public space. So give the floor to the people and co-create with them what we have as a content in all those beautiful buildings we have all over Europe. So we have to engage the citizens in the programming of our institutions, in the way we organize it, in the way we fund it, in the way we support it, etc. And that's, I think, the biggest step we have to take. And then we have to reconsider the role of the creative professionals that work in the field, since with this whole corona crisis, we have to reconsider the position of artists as well. That as a start.
Okay, thanks. Well, that's quite a transformation. And of course, there's lots to discuss here on how do you facilitate this and what do you need as a cultural organization to actually create this a new transformation and this new metaphor. Thanks, Oets. Let's go to our fourth online guest, and I'll go to the two guests here in the studio in Amsterdam. She's the Secretary General of the European Festivals Association, Catherine Daventer.
Thank you very much, Farid. Good evening, everyone. Well, as head of the European Festivals Association, I am more or less in daily touch with hundreds of festivals in Europe, but also beyond European borders in the world. And I can see that there is, of course, a strong offer as well as a strong need on the level of festivals to engage with this topic of citizenship or European citizenship, like even not just citizenship, but a transnational citizenship, or even from a European citizenship to the idea of a global community. And if you allow me personally, because I think it's an assumption that we all have to take. It's not a given or a mathematical fact that we all have to engage on European issues or on citizenship, but it's an assumption that we, I think, share in this room. I personally think that the arts can be applied in this context as a kind of glue or as a kind of instrument, because the essence, I guess, of the arts cannot only be felt in its aesthetics, but it can be also felt in the power of the imagination and in the power of the discourse that happens around the arts when we come together. And I think it's in particular in festivals or in this intellectual zone, in this meeting zone, that the story of interaction and the story of exchange really starts when people meet and when they come together. And this kind of ritual, I guess we feel it all now in these times, is just such an important part of the arts and the ritual of the arts, the pre-talks, the after-talks, and so forth. So I personally feel very, very close to the idea that the arts can be applied in this context as with a strong impact on community building. And I think that in this context, they are very important in the sense of curiosity, of living together, as Miguel said, of understanding each other, of questioning oneself, of dialogue, of empathy. And at the same time, of course, I realized that this is not just a one-dimensional exercise. It's not just the arts that have a task on citizenship building. I think it has to do also with the acknowledgement of access to knowledge, to university context, the awareness of your own community, of political stakeholders that we need to include in this context. So there is a lot to be done, I think. But I wanted just to say at the beginning of this conversation that I assume, not for the sake just of my argument, that the arts can be applied in this context, and that this is Spider-Man coming from the left,
Somebody
that the
wants
arts
attention.
can be applied in this context, and this is how we do it also in the frame of the European Festivals Association.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Catherine. And good you have the new generation already around you to have new members of our global and European community. Very concrete, thank you. And later on, we'll also talk with you about how can you join this learning model and what are the contributions of EFA. Let's go to the people here live in the studio. Let's start with with the head of European team, Pax for Peace, working to build just and peaceful societies, Dion van den Berg.
Well, thank you, Farid. Indeed, I'm Dion van den Berg. I lead the Europe team of Pax for Peace, which is the biggest peace organization in the Netherlands. Now, there's two ways to look at the European Union and developments. One way is to say we are in a crisis. See the East-West divide. We just had these problems with Poland and Hungary. And also there's the North-South divide. We've had problems organizing our solidarity with the South European EU member states who are sort of still recovering, well, in the middle of another corona crisis wave. So there's problems in terms of solidarity. At the same time, this European Commission is trying to work on citizens' participation. I think they are sincere. They have difficulties organizing it, but they are sincere. At the same time, there's the opportunities, there's the bottom-up development of participatory democracy. That's a worldwide development. We see it in the European Union as well, in the Netherlands, elsewhere. You see all of these local initiatives popping up, and indeed people re-operationalize the European values, even without mentioning these as European values. So there the connection is to be made. This is sort of what we try to do with linking levels, the bottom-up energy of citizens and the top-down search to reformulate European citizenship. Culture, the art, heritage is crucial, in our opinion, in that process. We just did a research on inclusive memorialization in the Western Balkans, which should, at a certain point in time, not too early, not too late, join the European Union. And we've seen a lot of energy in looking for inclusive memorialization, overcoming the exclusive nationalist narratives that we see from the key political parties, people joining, defining their common history and therewith also a common future. Yeah. There we see a lot of energy, especially also with young people. So there is huge value in working with young people, in my opinion, and yes, that's why it's important.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for sharing your ideas why cultural institutions, and in your case, NGOs, can play and must play a crucial role when it comes to these narratives, but also creating the right solidarity, which is needed if we want to tackle the issues we are being faced with. Last but not least, the director of Kameretten, the oldest and largest comedy festival in the Netherlands, Merel Maté.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you.
I'm here to observe as well what the findings are. But I think that the cultural organizations also could use a little bit of tools, because they're to find those means of European citizenship. So that's why I think this education environment is really important, and then hope to make that a little bit more accessible as well.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, let's explore this during the conversations and also with you later on. Isabella and Miguel, can I start with you too? Because you have been from the start involved in this European model, this learning model when it comes to European citizenship. So it would be interesting to first hear from you, now that you've been working together for the last couple of years to create this model when it comes to combining heritage, culture, European citizenship, and therefore have cultural practitioners more empowered, more enabled to make sure that their organizations and their communities can be part of this, creating this right solidarity. So Isabella or Miguel, I don't know who would like to start, but could you say something about what was the first thing you wanted to develop that these cultural practitioners could take home or could use within their organizations to create, well, the space and the need for the discussions we're having today? Who wants to start? Yeah,
can
Isabella,
I start,
go ahead.
maybe?
Sure. Yep.
Go ahead.
For me personally, being a historian, as well as for the organization that I represent in this project, one of the most important things that we wanted to do was to draw attention to to this East-West divide that Dion was talking about, and whether it's perceived, whether it's real, whether it's political, economic, cultural, and all the kind of notions that go with that go together with this East-West divide. We wanted to also include a kind of a nuanced version of teaching culture to prospective cultural entrepreneurs, so that they don't have a kind of a block image of culture in their heads, that I have, my culture is this or my culture is that. It's a very difficult and very versatile concept which covers the past, the memories of the past, stories. It covers art. It covers conventions of expression, identity. A lot of difficult things that that need sort of a dialogical way of teaching, and especially people who would like to become entrepreneurs in the field of culture. It is a very important thing that they understand, and also culture may be something that we are not particularly proud of. There are parts of our culture that we would like to forget, that we would need to change, that we would need to work on, heal about, and there are parts that we are proud of. We would like to connect to others through certain elements of our culture, and also there are elements in every cultural community that can connect them. Yep. And there's a real value to really rediscover those European elements that are there, but usually are kind of not really talked about all that much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
For us, that was very important.
And it sounds very interesting when it comes to this dialogical way of teaching, as something we can contribute to, and also have these different fields of scope in our thinking and also in our practice.
Yeah. And we like interaction. We like kind of horizontal ways of studying and teaching. That it's not just the expert who teaches students from up top and tells them what to memorize or what to learn, but it's more like a co-creation of knowledge that we stand for. And I think we could connect with many of our partners on that level as well. And
okay. Let's go to one of these partners. Let's go to Miguel.
Yeah.
Because how is this for you? Isabella mentioned some very interesting notions of what was important to develop. What kind of culture are we talking about? The perspective from your culture, but also the dialogue and the interaction. What's for you important, Miguel, to develop in this learning model that you have been participating for the last couple of years now?
Okay, so thank you very much. I think I feel very identified with what Isabella said, but for us, I think it was especially important because, first of all, it was something unique, something new to make this link between European citizenship, European identity, culture, and heritage. I was making some research on, for instance, on Spain, and there was nothing similar to teach on this management of culture to promote European citizenship. So that was the first thing that was especially interesting for us, and to approach that to the Spanish society was also something very, very special and very, very important, because it gave us a new approach of the power of culture, and also a new approach on how to address the promotion of active citizenship, and especially European citizenship. We were making this research, but we were also practicing it by organizing these summer courses and capacity building. I think the most important thing was to put together people from very different fields, not only from the cultural sector, but from the academic sector, from the political sector, from the civil society sector. So at the end, we were approaching that from different fields, also from the citizenship sector, from the municipality and regional and local sector, not only from the top sector of European or national level, but also trying to have the local people and the local politicians involved on this, and also having a very let's say, disciplinary approach. That makes it also very, very different from the normal approach we have, because this allows us to see ourselves like not like let's say individuals person, because we are much more than individual persons, than individual cultures. We are a mix of all the cultures that are crossing and living in Europe and in the world, and this is quite clear. But we don't see that when we see ourselves in the mirror, when we talk with our friends in the local level. So for us, that was also very important to make people understand the necessity and the need of the importance of living other cultures. And that is what we also try to promote in our project, putting people together from different cultures, from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, so they learn to understand each other and see that the world is much bigger than their own private little world in which they live. It's the only way for us to make us understand that we have to co-create and co-work in a region and in a like the European Union, and also in a world like the global world we are living in, is the only way to face the different crises and the different challenges we are facing nowadays. That some of them were mentioned before by the speaker that is in the studio with you. But we are very sure that we can only we can only face those challenges by working together, and really culture can help us to understand ourselves and to understand why we should work together. And for that, you need to practice that, you need to do it, and projects like this help us to really know each other a little bit much better, so understand each other better and let us working better together.
Okay, because that will be my follow-up question for you then, Miguel. What becomes possible also in the course or after the course for cultural practitioners? What becomes possible if they understand this, if they have felt this new culture, these other cultures? What becomes possible then in their new instruments or new ways of looking into the possibilities they have and their organizations have to work on European citizenship?
So for them, it was quite clear that it was essential to work with other people in other countries, in other disciplines. And I think for us, that was one of the most important, let's say, outputs, no? This vision of not working just at local or regional level or even national level, but being able to work at other levels. And I could see that the interest of, for instance, of our students rise a lot when they were asking us how to participate in other activities at the European level, or how to participate in other events related with culture. How even some of them were proposing some, let's say, to start some kind of network to develop activities that help us to be more active at the European level, because before that encounter that the summer course we had in Juste, they didn't even know how to participate, how to be able to be active citizens at the European level. This course in some way opened them the eyes, and they also saw what was happening in other places. And what is more important, they realized that many of the problems that they were facing in the normal or the daily lives were the same problems that other people was facing in other places in Europe. I remember, for instance, the speech of Isabella in Juste, showing the history of she was showing about Hungary and how close our history was in some way, and how we were facing the same problems, and how the active culture or the activism of culture could help to change the things in a positive way. Okay. I think it was the most important thing for the people who was participating in our activities.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, Miguel. Isabella, also for you, I would be interested in you being part of this project now for a couple of years. What is for you the most important learning, also now that we look to the future of this learning model and how more partners can join? What is for you the one or two key points you want to take with you and develop more in the future based on the success of the last couple of years?
Yes, I think the biggest challenge is to get on the same page. Basically, it's a very simple thing to say, and it's very hard to do for people to really speak common languages or a common language. Yeah, we have English as the lingua franca in our classrooms, and everybody sort of understands each other. But still, when you have different disciplines, when you have different culture backgrounds, then of course you don't understand the same things under the same concepts at all times. So that's one of the things that needs to be worked on, and any potential new partners, if they could have input in this, that would be greatly appreciated. And that, because this is an ongoing work that we need to do. And then the other really important aspect is the structure or the institutionalization of any new approach in spreading education and culture and developing study programs. So there is a very high degree of diversification in the EU as far as educational systems go. So even just to just to have a degree accredited in one place or in another, it's a very difficult issue. So to accredit this program as an MBA in culture, heritage, and entrepreneurship and European citizenship, it's a very specific field, and it's very it will need a lot of thinking work in how to get that more well recognized, accredited, and so on. Yeah. So I think that's where much of the work lies.
Okay, cool. We'll come back on this a bit later on. I would like to go to Utz and Dion, who have been part of some of the programs we have been discussing in the last 30 minutes now, when it comes to what kind of programs, learning communities can we create in the right way so that more cultural practitioners feel empowered and feel able to join this quest for citizenship and European citizenship more specifically. Utz and Dion, one online and one here next to me, but let's see who starts. What struck you when you became part of this program, and what was the most important thing you wanted to take with you for the participants, and what did you take from the participants in your own practice back? Who starts?
Utz, please start.
Okay, then I start. What for me was very important to investigate if the concept we had for the European Capital of Culture in 2018 could be elaborated to other sceneries. We made a huge project of, well, that's not very flatters picture, but
we see you live now, way more flattering.
What we tried to do in the European Capital of Culture in 2018 is to engage people in a strong way, and I think we managed to do that in the sense that I think now are in the books as the most participative European Capital of Culture, and
which was in Leeuwarden in the northern part of the Netherlands, by the way.
Leeuwarden 2018, and we had some methods for that, and in the program I try to exchange with the students which part of it were specific for the situation in our city, and which ones were more usable on other places, on other spaces. And for me, what struck me was that some things I thought were universal were more local, and other things were that I didn't think were too universal were strongly universal, and that's.
And can you give you an example? Can you highlight such an expectation which went the other way?
Which went the other way? You say, well, what quite strongly has been developed in the region I live is the field of the unions, the orchestras, etc., that are organized in unions, and we thought that they would be a strong part of the program, but in the end were not that strong. But the students I spoke said, well, especially the amateur orchestras, etc., in our cities. Could be a strong base for the program. So in that sense, there was a change of perspective.
Okay, interesting. Dion, how is that for you? Also from the NGO perspective, what was it that you wanted to bring on board, and what was something you took with you in this dialogue that was created?
Well, what I learned, I'd like to emphasize what I learned. I'm just an activist. I started more than 40 years ago. I'm a peace activist, and
still very strong.
I hope so. And more than 40 years ago, we started working also with the dissidents in the Warsaw Pact countries. Yeah. People as Václav Havel and Mazowiecki and many others. And I came across some of them again a few years ago when there was the Summer University in Kőszeg in Hungary. It was great to meet some of them again. And I came to an important conclusion that we need in Europe what we should have done more than 30 years ago. So let's go back in time. There's the fall of the Berlin Wall. In these days, the dissidents who played a key role in the fall of the Berlin Wall had ideas on making Europe better, better than communism, better as capitalism, something new. The ones organizing the opposition in the GDR in East Germany, Neues Forum, they had written a new constitution for a truly democratic East Germany. We know what happened. There was the reunification, all understandable, but there was never, this is my point, there was never a serious debate on how we see the future of Europe together in this bigger European context. And we still need to have that discussion. And we see that liberalism, as we now know it, has created problems and did not solve many of the existing problems. And I do fully support the establishment now of the mechanism on rule of law within the EU member states. We need it. And at the same time, we need an open, broad discussion on how do we see these European values together, because this is not black and white. We can criticize the governments in Poland and Hungary, but we shouldn't forget that the mayors of Warsaw and Budapest are from the opposition. And many people do have another opinion. We need to engage into that bigger perspective, also keeping in mind it's not only Poland and Hungary, it's the populists that we see all over the place in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands. So we need that bigger bottom-up discussion.
And this is interesting because this is where I think also your bridge between the NGO and your activism combined with the cultural perspective is very important, because if you want to create these ideas, if you want to have movements of these ideas, then of course cultural practitioners are an important way to communicate and to let people participate. No?
Even more so than it used to be, perhaps.
Okay.
You know, I'm one of these political scientists, or not scientists, activists, you know, always getting into the political dimension of activism. And over time, I've learned that this cultural dimension of organizing and also organizing dialogue, I really like the idea of dialogical teaching that Isabella mentioned. I mean, that is truly what we need together to find ways to get people involved, the ones who are not perhaps familiar with the trias politica and all of these other things that are relevant as well. You know, there is a lot to be done on the institutions in Brussels, but the basic idea of being a European citizen and feel that unity can way more easily be achieved also by means of cultural encounter.
Utz, is very interesting what Dion is mentioning also when it comes to the activism he's looking for and also the ideas we need. You also started this session with mentioning the paradigm shift, that it's about shifting consumerism and going to more participation and global communities. So it's interesting then, how can cultural organizations participate this and make this shift? What do we need in the minds, but also in the instruments that they can make this paradigm shift also in real?
Well, I think it's quite a long run to organize that, because the first thing you have to realize, this weekend a Dutch newspaper published a list of the 200 most influential people in the Netherlands, and there was not one writer on in that list. Can you imagine that 30, 40, 50 years ago? And that is, I think, one of the most serious threats of the debate of these days. That is that there is almost no floor for the severe intellectual debate. And yes, you can blame the populists for that, but I think that you could also look at the cultural field in itself. So in what way are we able to bring ideas to the floor in which we can engage people? And therefore, I think we need a strong reconsidering of ourselves, of our cultural scene, our cultural institutions, and the way we engage public in questions, important questions as citizenship on a European level. And I think that is where we have to work on.
Okay, and let's be more concrete for you and then also for Dion. What kind of methods and learning models can we create also looking forward to this project has been done now? We're going to look for new partners. What kind of partners do we need, or what kind of models do we have to extend to make sure that this creation of ideas and having more impact as a cultural sector can be guaranteed so that we have a better way forward? Maybe first for you, Oets?
Well, there are many methods, but I think the most important thing is that we try to organize a situation in which people work together on very concrete issues on a local level that tell us something about the whole. I can give you an example of that. I worked together with Sjoerd Wagenaar, an artist in DDNA, the Dutch Development Center for Natural Arts, and we have a method there to investigate a scenery, let me say a square kilometer or something like that. And there we start to talk with people, what materials are here, what buildings are here, what's the history, what's the story, and how is this place, because that place is at that moment is the center of the world, how is this place connected to other places in the world or in Europe, and what tells us that? And how can we engage the people that we are connected with through this project? And so you build on a network of people that investigate their own situation and at the same time are strongly connected to issues all over the world. And I think methods like that, more than just studying, is what the program needs. Yeah,
that's it. That's a great example. Right? Are you aware of your context, and how can this context be used for different connections or different ways of cooperating? Thanks so much, Oets. How's that for you, Dion? What do you think is important to also when we look to further expanding learning models within the cultural scene to make sure that the citizenship is actually going to work?
Well, first of all, organizing bottom-up developments and processes is a bit of a contradictio in terminis, isn't it? You know, because you cannot and you should not.
It's a paradox,
we should try to refrain from organizing too much. What should develop organically. What I would like us to develop more is modalities of laboratories, where you bring in the practitioners and have the academia support, monitor, analyze, understand the things that are happening. And that would be key for me in the development of some upcoming activities in the new program, to have these laboratories incorporated, where citizens, bottom-up, can share their ideas and experiences with the academia, who can help understand the bigger picture. One concrete example that we are working on is also bottom-up, what we call working title Stories of War and Peace. And what we propose to local communities is that they citizens and journalists and local just citizens work and understand how their community or town or city or village was shaped over the centuries in times of war and peace, and how they adapted to circumstances, and how they incorporated the influx of new ideas, the asylum seekers, the migrant workers, all of the others. How did we develop that European identity over time? And sort of understand how it developed and see where the resilience is and the capacity to incorporate developments that influence all of these communities, even the smaller ones, all throughout Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. To make this, I mean, it seems like we also have a collective amnesia sometimes about our history.
True.
And therefore it makes very sense to build up these layers up again, and then we see the connections we can make.
Yes.
Interesting, thank you. Let's go to the person sitting opposite to you, Merel. Many things have been said already in like, what is it, 40 almost 45 minutes. But let's get your perspective on this. You're also working on a course yourself, a learning model for next year. Is there something you heard now which really struck you and like, oh yeah, I'm going to incorporate this, or is there something additional you would like to add because you missed something, or you're working on this yourself in the model you're creating?
Well, the interesting thing about what I've heard is that the common ground is communication and ensuring that you're talking about the same context. So I think primarily I take that with it, because that's I think on a bigger level, on a European level, but also in a smaller level in a separate country, or a little village and a city next to it, there's also a disconnect sometimes in those communications. So that's I think as well as locally as in the broader picture very important. So that's a good takeaway from this.
Great. And do you have an idea how you could incorporate this in the approach you're creating currently?
Well, maybe I should also
go ahead.
Tell a little bit. So the short MBA is also to enable cultural organizations to have like a low accessible tool to get some business perspectives, and then this citizenship is one of the important points on strategic positions. And sometimes you have the social function of the theater is out of sight. So I think there's a important part. I think the challenge of most organizations is how to change that culture within the organization and to activate those people. So I hear good ideas, and I'm really looking forward to the becoming real part.
Yeah.
Sorry for I can't get the
let's
word.
get it realized, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's work on it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Catherine, let's go to you. Also, you're interested and going to participate in some of these discussions as well. You have been, but also, what's the challenge for Eva, and what are you looking for when it comes to creating the learning models that we have been discussing now for quite a while already?
Okay, first, Farid, I have to mention and tell Oets that we have Farid amongst the most 200 influential people in the Netherlands, and he also writes. So I wanted to
I'm not
say
a
that
writer,
Farid, our moderator. Credit who credit belongs to.
Thanks.
Secondly, I wanted to mention, as I mentioned in the introduction before, I think festivals have a great offer in this context of citizenship, but also a great need when it comes to concrete actions, how to embrace this concept of citizenship in the practice of a festival. And maybe it's also worth to underline in this discussion that when we speak about European citizenship, I think we all agree that the European citizenship for me is a necessary step towards a global community and towards a world community that embraces all those global questions that, of course, are not just European. But it's a necessary step. So it's worth and it's important to speak about European citizenship, of course. And then also, I do not need to explain to any of you that the community or a community is the necessary matrix of any festival. There would be no festival without the community, but the scale of the community, of course, can differ. The local context is probably the most inherent daily part of a festival's community. If you divide a community, it would be wrong, by the way, otherwise. But the global community somehow is part of these local roots. And that's sometimes the kind of tricky part from the local to the global. And with that, I mean what Volker Hassemer once mentioned, the roots from above. It's a discourse, it's a task, and it's something very present in our daily lives, these global roots. Also what I wanted to mention conceptually that was just mentioned before, Europe, I think, is not an ending story. It's a never-ending story in the sense that it's under continual construction. There is a continual task for all of us to work on citizenship, and a need, in particular when we look at parts of Europe and the world where citizenship concepts are lacking or where they are not implemented in the way that we think. Like we spoke already about some Central European countries, Western Balkan countries, and then we can look, whenever I start speaking, my children come. They did not come for the entire session. This is for you. And I have tons of sweets. And so whenever one comes, I give another part of the sweet. So please take the sweets, you see, and eat. Enjoy. So I wanted to say that coming to festivals, that it might seem somehow clear that festivals are a target group of this concept and of the programs that you are developing. But at the same time, sometimes it might seem quite remote for them to speak about citizenship issues, because a daily task of a festival might be to be building a program. It is about building budgets. It's about building audiences. It's about selling tickets. It's about winning sponsors and looking for funders to pay for the program. And often it stops here. So this laboratory function that we just spoke about maybe is not always immediately in the heads of festivals. So again, it's a continual attention point that I think we need to embrace. And I know from Steve Austin's I don't know from the first, probably Steve has spoken about this topic for his entire career. But we have been working together in a platform on the European level. And it was quite difficult to develop this platform together with Miguel as well, from the concept of audience building and audience development to the idea of citizenship and the cultural dimension of citizenship. So we see that it's not a necessary DNA of every cultural organization within our own kind of realm of work. So what we as IFA, as a community, what we can actually offer is a group. It's a kind of a matrix. We can offer a whole kind of community that I think can offer and is in need of these concepts and concrete implementation actions. There is a need for programs, for very concrete one-on-one, bottom-up programs on the academic level, on the practical level, in which we can continually speak and exchange and work on this concept of bottom-up, a Europe bottom-up or a world community bottom-up. And maybe a last point, Farid, if you allow me to mention, is that I think we should never stop just speaking to ourselves. And I think it was mentioned before as well. What we started with IFA is to include also mayors, cities representatives, those that are taking decisions on the local level, where citizenship is, I think, very much on your skin and felt, into our conversation. So I would always invite us, if a city agrees to provide a public space for citizens to participate actively and bottom up in local environments and on the topic of citizenship. And we are offering natural partnerships with festivals and other NGOs on the local level. So I would include this. Wow.
We'll come back to you, Catherine, in a minute, and then you can make your final statement. Merel, because let's go to you, because what Catherine is really interesting when she says it's quite a thing already to organize a festival, to have everything going on and be part of your community. So what do you think also from your perspective as a director of a festival, what kind of needs do you have to actually make sure that this notion of citizenship becomes part of the organization, of the DNA and of your practice?
So our festival is also with young talent. So I agree also with it. It starts with the young people. To become a part of the community, people have to feel like it's they have influence on it. So a very important part in our festival is also the votes. So there's a prize from a jury, and there's a prize from the audiences. So that and then it different. So some people say the opinion of the jury is very important, but mostly the people buy the tickets, so you want to please them as well. Yeah. So that's also like engaging the community to have influence on the thing they like to see in the long run.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. We're almost out of time already. We have a couple of more minutes to go. So let's make a final round of everybody and see what are the most important steps forward. Some of us are new to these learning models or going to contribute from now on. Some have some more experience. What do you think is very important to expand to in the coming years? Maybe expansion when it comes to the right partners. Maybe it's the next step in the right content. Maybe the next step in the next dialogue. But it would be very interested to see how do you think you as an organization, as a person, can contribute to all these questions that we've been trying to answer tonight. Isabella, and can I start with you?
Sure. Well, I think all of the above, all of what you mentioned are equally important. I wouldn't say that we need to only concentrate on content or partners or European legislation or any of these individually, but I think it should be a concentrated effort further on to reach out more to involve more organizations from the field of education, from the field of culture, from anything that we can imagine that could be an important input into the project. And community organizers I can think of, or people who do have ideas but they don't know how to go about it, to create these platforms. I think that that's an important thing that UTS is doing, for example, to create these places where people can get involved. And in Hungary, we totally lack those. So people have no idea that they can even have just a small impact on anything. So in Kőszeg, we have this laboratory with involving the municipality, with the local little entrepreneurs and the government. So it's a whole big experiment that we are doing there, and treating that as a kind of a laboratory. We will see, but I say all of what you mentioned are equally important. Okay, great.
Miguel, how do you see this? Maximum 1 minute, and also maybe the biggest opportunity you see yourself.
Well, I will try to be as brief as possible, but I have a few things that are quite clear. The situation right now is quite different as the situation was when we are developing this project. After this pandemic, everything will change, but maybe know our priorities. So the first thing I think we should do is to do what we know to do. Each one should do his best about the work they do in the cultural and field and the citizenship field. The other thing is that we have to learn to work more together at, let's say, multi-level and multidisciplinary level. We have to work at all levels, local, regional, national, and European level, and also try to engage as much people as possible from the other disciplines, but we cannot do it alone. We need other partners from the private sector, from the academic sector, from the political sector, from the union sector, also from the cultural sector, of course. And what I would like is, because now we have a big window open with this new conference on the future of Europe, is to use also this conference for the future of Europe to give more power to culture, to promote European citizenship. And I will ask for a European cultural deal, because we are talking about the Green Deal, we are talking about the Digital Deal and so on. But we realize how important is culture in our life during this pandemic. Everyone, the only sector that was really doing something that was present all the time in our lives to foster our emotions and to connect ourselves was the cultural sector in many different ways. And I will call for a cultural deal so we can really work together and give culture the importance it has in our development of our future policies.
Thanks so much, Miguel. And very good you mentioned also the conference and the opportunity. UTS, how's that for you? As short as possible.
Yeah, well, there are two severe crises in Europe, I think. That is, one is how we deal with each other as humans, and the other one is how we deal with our world. And I think that we should organize projects that are about those two questions in a combination of citizens, scientists, and artists. And that I would like to work on in the future with this MBA.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Catherine, ready?
Yes. European Cultural Deal, Miguel, I'll join it. And I think we have a lot of colleagues to join that deal. So for Europe, European Festivals Association, I mean, so many of them will work for that deal with you together. And so I'm in. We have 60 cities in our Festival Cities initiative that together with the Soul for Europe and different ECOCs, European Capitals of Culture, are there for us to serve them with ideas. As you said, Isabella, some just lack the ideas and are ready actually to implement them. So we need this bottom-up exchange, not just platforms to communicate, but actions on the ground level, to use content generated on the ground level amongst different sectors, science, political sectors, the practitioner sector, within the cultural realm. And I think We just need to go on working. We are working without a finality. We are without a purpose as such. We are working every day. So
absolutely.
Let's go on working. It's our job.
A never-ending story, and now you have your dialogue with your kids. Thank you, Catherine. Merel, how's that for you? What's for you the biggest opportunity in the coming months?
Yeah, I think the inspire each other and sharing the stories and learnings with each other, and then in that regard also the short MBA of theater, music, and dance, which is a introduction of discourse. So hopefully we'll tickle some curiosity to enter that, and hopefully they can join the biggest or the big MBA.
Yep. Okay, let's do it. And good luck with further preparations.
Thanks.
Last but not least, Dion, what's for you the biggest opportunity?
It's great to be an activist, but the problem of being an activist is you don't write your own history because you're always running for another deadline. So what I like in this work, in this process, is that I'm challenged to organize our own experiences. There's a wealth of experience in civil society, but we should take more time to sit down, to understand the things we have been doing, and to try and then translate this into an offer, a course offer, into an MBA, into bigger learning processes. So that is what I want to bring to this ongoing process.
Okay. Thanks so much. We have been sitting down in the last hour to actually do this. So I would like to thank everybody for joining us, our 6 guests, of course, but also everybody who watched this and also had some conversations on a chat, probably. It's a never-ending story. It's by coincidence my favorite film, of course, and book. But aside from that, let's continue to work. There's much to be done when it comes to cultural and NGOs, when it comes to European citizenship. So much is clear, and let's continue discussion. Thanks so much and have a great evening. Thanks so much for Pakhuis de Zwijger. Thanks so much for the EU Erasmus Plus program, of course, for making this all possible. Have a great day.